Hey everyone, welcome to the Church Brand Guide podcast. My name is Michael Persad. Today we're going to be jumping into an interesting conversation that I think will inspire you. It's a very unique approach to ministry where we're reaching out to people using business tactics. Geno contacted me several months ago. He's a business owner with a huge passion for reaching millennials and getting them to re engage with a local church. And he saw a problem and decided that he was going to do something about it. And he wanted to use some business tactics that he uses to reach people with his business. He has a martial arts studio and he does a lot of different things to engage with his community and get them to sign up for his classes. And he thought, hey, what if we did this for a ministry that could reach out to people who need the gospel and then engage with them to the point where they can have a conversation and ultimately get them placed into a local church. So it's not a church. It's just a ministry that helps people connect into a church, millennials specifically. So I think, again, a very inspirational conversation. You'll get a lot out of it if you are working in church world because it's just approaching ministry from a completely different perspective. We're going to be talking about CRMs, which is basically a software it's called a client relationship management tool. And you're able to get people into that tool. And then from there, get automation set up for emails and text messages that get dropped out. There's even like a scheduler where you can schedule a time to have a conversation, or somebody can schedule time with you to have a conversation. So we've implemented all of this into a brand new website platform, and it's really just designed to be a SEO friendly tool that reaches out to people in the area and engages with them to the point where they schedule a time to connect with Geno. Geno is the owner of this. He created 99 for 1, which is the name of the ministry we're going to be talking about. And he, in this episode, will unpack exactly the mindset behind it and the tactics that are being implemented. And again, I think it's just really cool for a church, if you're a church leader out there, if you do communications or maybe you're a pastor, just a different perspective of, hey, how can we reach more people? So, and that's what we're all about here at Church Brand Guide. We want to help you to cut through the noise so that you can reach more people, see more life change take place as a result of that, and ultimately see more people contributing to the vision of your church. I would love to work with you if you are interested in developing a brand, a logo, website, and even beyond that. If you're interested in strategy, talking through like, hey, what could a brand strategy look like for our church? I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can go to churchbrandguide.com, schedule a time with me. Let's get to know each other a little bit and see if I might be able to help you in this process. Again, branding covers a lot of different things, but if you're needing a new logo, website, that's a good starting point. And then we can kind of see what else might be needed from there. But let's have a conversation. I would love to meet you, learn about your church, and see if I can help you out. But right now, we're going to jump into our episode with Geno, and he's going to tell us about 99 for 1, and I know you're going to get a lot out of it. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. I am here with Geno Guevara, and Geno is an amazing guy that I met a little while ago, and he created this amazing website called 99 for 1. We're going to talk about it here in just a moment, but welcome, Geno, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Geno, before we get into what you're doing, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my original, actually, what I do full time is I'm actually a martial arts instructor. I've been teaching martial arts for about 30 years. That's kind of opened up my own studio probably about 10 years ago, and have been doing that full time. And during that period, it's allowed me to grow, as a business person. Kind of, it's been pretty successful. I've had my ups and my downs, just like everybody in business does, but I'm definitely blessed and grateful for where I'm at. And, during that journey, it's kind of, God kind of put something on my heart, which was this ministry and this platform to be able to try something different and kind of bring in my past and, my strengths into, try something different, and utilize my experience in a unique way. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, Geno and I met a little while ago, several months ago now. But he was trying to build this kind of new ministry model. And I remember talking on the phone with Geno, and he described his audience, and he started to describe some of the things that. Well, first of all, it's the stuff I would ask about, but he kind of came already prepared, like, "Hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is some of my messaging." And then but he brought it from a kind of a business perspective. So it's ministry, and it's kind of, hey, the gospel and presenting the gospel, but it's just in a very unique way. So actually, let's get into that a little bit. Geno, what was the problem that you saw that you're like, man, I've got to do something about this?
Well, it was actually so when I think about it is I know that millennials are disrupting every industry, and I knew that was and it wasn't unique to the church itself, right? A lot of times I think we think that it's just happening to the church, but I realized that this was millennials were disrupting every industry, and the church was no exception. Just like my martial arts school was no exception. So once I saw that with my martial arts school, I realized that this is not a unique problem to church. And so, but what I did feel is I did feel that there was this kind of disconnect. And well, first off, let me back up. Is I actually went on probably for about 3 years. I looked through different research, not just within the church model itself, but actually market data from this millennial group outside of the church. And I started to kind of ask this question: is what would it look like to try to reach them in a different way? Since I think we all realize is that it is being disrupted, and what does a disruption look like, and how that play out in a new ministry to try to reach them, and so that was about a 3-year process. So when I came to you with that research and kind of my ideas, and was looking for a way to kind of bring it together and then visually put some visuals behind it.
So Geno is trying to reach millennials. He basically was like, hey, I have a heart, I have a passion for this group of people. I don't think that the church in general is uh, something that they really gravitate towards, like just very generally speaking. And so he's like, hey, what if we did things differently? What if we reach these people kind of online first, and then try to get them into like a relationship, and from there, kind of point them towards resources and a church. And what if we had a ministry that wasn't necessarily a church right off the bat, but it was something that really connected people, millennials specifically, into a church? And he called it 99 for one. Geno, why don't you talk about 99 for one, and what that means and what the strategy is behind it?
Well, yes. So that's the scripture. We all know about Jesus leaving the 99 sheep for one, and so that was the mission, is to bring millennials back to the faith. And so I kind of felt it had two deeper meanings, where we go after that one person, and then also we're leaving the physical church, and then going into this, being this one church is kind of online first. It's kind of basically, I like to think it is like the connect card, the digital connect card prior to actually anybody stepping into the church. And so, based on the research, the idea was a lot of times they don't feel like they fit in church yet. And so there's this step that a lot of people need before they actually step into a physical location. And my idea was, instead of, the normal church journey is bringing them into a group, then putting them into a small group, and hopefully within that small group they develop a one-on-one relationship, and so that's with fellow Christians in community, and they develop, that's basically the normal model that you would say that most people go through. And what I thought is, why don't we just flip it around and start with developing a one-on-one relationship first, letting them explore different groups, and then the last step is actually bringing them into a physical location. And since it is an online ministry, the idea behind it is that, I feel that Holy Spirit will guide them to the church that they need to go to. We're just that digital hand of God that's going to reach out and develop a relationship first, and then, be there for them, pray for them, develop that relationship, get them into a small group, and then hopefully at one point when they're ready to step in and they realize that, hey, I need to connect to a physical church, then they can do it in that way. So that was the idea behind it. Is and then one of the other things is, with this data is, I know you and I had talked about creating strategy behind the data that we had come up with, or that I had presented to you, and being real strategic about it, as far as, how would that look online? And obviously, the you know one of the biggest concerns that we feel, that based on the research, was that they feel that they're being judged, right? They don't want to be judged. Okay, and that's certainly understandable. And the strategy behind it was, well, why don't we start with a text message that's, where you can't actually physically see them, but it brings down that barrier. So the point of entry is actually online, without any where you don't actually see the person yet, so that this way they don't feel whether they look different, whether they act different, whether they believe different. That goes all out the window, when we start that initial conversation.
So how's your background with business kind of prepared you for this? You have a karate studio. That's one of the striking things in our conversations. I was like, oh man, Geno's thinking about this thing from a completely different angle. How do you think that's, you're having to market a business and run a business, and like, how did that influence what you're doing with 99 for One?
Well, I knew that about 7 years ago, I saw the power of digital advertising. And so that one piece is being able to, and it took a long time to kind of understand it, and a lot of money, and figuring out and tweaking it. But then eventually, I would say, it took me, a couple of $1,000s and a lot of failed campaigns to realize that once you have a message and you know how to reach people, you can reach them online in a, it's one of the best ways to actually, it's my number one lead generating source when it comes to bringing students into the school. And so I knew that, I felt that that could also be applied in the ministry, is really developing a relationship online first. And then the last step would be them physically coming into a location. So I knew that the digital part was the lead generation, I guess you could say, in the business terms, where that could also be applied when it comes to the ministry.
And what's your background in ministry? Like, have you been involved in maybe church or just ministry in general?
Well, basically, I found, I went into recovery. I found recovery about 15 years ago, and that completely changed my life. And I think that this piece in my heart, it took me a while to grow closer to God. So it wasn't something that I had ever planned till about 3 or 4 years ago. And I enjoy online services. I'm part of an online church. I enjoy church planning, as there's, as far as, there was a gentleman that has a local church here that I was a part of, and it's just, I have this passion for, just trying different things, so as far as, when I bring my personal background, is I'm not a pastor, so I'm not trying to be a pastor, but I'm trying to use this as a platform to try to get people to go to church. I guess that's the biggest difference, is like, I'm not trying to be your pastor. I'm trying to expose you to different, content, because I just feel there's so much great content from pastors out there. And I guess kind of backing up is, starting a conversation, a one-on-one conversation, prior to actually anybody stepping in the church, I would be able to guide them towards certain messages that would speak to them in a personal level. So if somebody has experienced physical abuse or sexual abuse, or is dealing with, like, let's say, for example, addiction or alcoholism or PTSD, there's so many great pastors out there that address that. And I can actually say, hey, I know this, go check out this link on this pastor online and see what you think. And so this way it's more about developing that personal relationship with them and saying, this is what's out there, because they're just, nowadays everything is online, the content out there, even the worship is just at another level, where it's like, why not use and aggregate and expose people to messages that would be relevant to what they're going through.
Yeah, and that's the thing I thought was very unique with in working with you, Geno, is that you weren't necessarily like coming from that heavy ministry pastoral background. You just came from a background. Really, it's just your heart. Like, man, I just really want to help people that don't know Jesus to get to know Jesus. That's it. Like, that's what it all boiled down to. Like, I experienced this, and I wanted for other people like me to experience this thing. And you're like, I just have this idea, and I'm willing to kind of try it and see what happens. And I mean, I just love that. I love that approach, and your effort behind it. It kind of evolved. At first, it started like, hey, it's going to be like a physical space, and then we're like, no, actually, with COVID and everything that happened, like it's probably just an online thing, and maybe eventually becomes a physical thing. But who knows? I love the fact that you're just kind of exploring what that looks like. And one of the things you mentioned to me just right before our call today was that, man, now you put it out there, you're seeing that it's not really for everyone. Yeah, but in that's a good thing. Like you created it, you're addressing issues that are very specific to this group of people, and it's really not for everyone. So I guess can you talk about that?
Yeah, so basically, when it came down to the research, is I decided to focus in on one individual, and that was going to be who I was going to speak to, and I call her the fun, fearless female millennial. And so they speak different. They're how they react, and so they're very they're out there. And so I wanted to make sure, if even when you go to the site, you can see the messaging and the language, it really resonates with that demographic. So if you're not that person, when it first went online, I actually had my mom take a look at it, and she kind of she was afraid. She's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because I don't agree with what you're doing. And I'm like, that's at first I was a little like hurt, because I'm like, how come you're not supporting me? And then I realized it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, and it's talking to a very, very specific person, that is going to resonate with. And then I also had an interview with an older gentleman that's a pastor, and again, I'm not against this is an online ministry, and so I'm trying to connect with people online. And he was trying to push the fact that it needs to be in person, and I get it, you know what I mean? And I do want people to, it's not that I don't want people to go to church. I'm just trying to reach those that are not ready to step into church but do want to explore their faith. And this is that I felt that was the gap. There was a little gap, and that was the gap that I could step into and feel for that small group of people that are not ready but are curious.
Yeah, and in the design process of a lot of these things, Gino, you brought in your target audience. We had a young lady that was part of our group, and we had these discussions. And I just remember going through the design process for the website, the logo, and a lot of the branding, and it was different. It's like, oh wow, really? That's you want to do that? Like you want to go in that direction? Like so it was even from my perspective, it was not typical of like a church, the typical church approach. In fact, if you want to check out the website, it's 99 for one, 99 for the number four and then one.co. And it's just different. Just the way your language, the way that you put the messaging out there, some of the images that we use, the logo itself is kind of edgy and a little bit just unique. You wouldn't think it's a church or a ministry, you just kind of came in from the outside. So it's very unique and it's very different. For me, it's kind of the fun of working on a project like this was creating something so unique. Once you catch us, what are your next steps for 99 for one? We just launched it a couple months ago. You're starting to get the word out there. What does the next steps look like for you?
So at this point, it's working on building an audience through content and also some unique ways. Mel and I, which is, we're going to be kicking off. One of the ideas that we had was to try to reach people where they're at. And right now, this fearless, fun female is on Facebook Live. She loves lives. And so what we're actually doing is we're creating a live show called Enhanced by Mel. And basically, it's this idea of that it's okay to want to look beautiful, and at the same time, you have beauty inside. And so the idea is to have these. She's doing basically it's a makeup kind of live where she's going to go through and just have conversations with people and let those conversations organically go towards God, and she's going to share her testimony. And so we're working on building out that live show on Facebook so that this way she can start to engage and just have conversations and give. Right, that's the idea: is give and be where she would be at, that target audience. And I think that was the scary part, is really focusing on one person individually. And I believe that there's a million people out there that are kind of that have that same lifestyle, that have that same thought process, and that are looking for something different in a way to connect.
And that's what great brands do. They reach out to the type of people that when they experience the brand, they're like, wow, I love this. I've been waiting for this all my life. So the brands that are very successful are typically the brands that do risk it and say, hey, we're going all in to reach this type of person. A lot of times it's not a demographic. It could be more of a mindset. And I really feel like that's kind of what you've done too. You're tapping into the mindset of the way that this type of person thinks. And just to put it out there, it's not about saying no to anybody. It's everybody's welcome. The gospel is for everybody. But as far as like what you're trying to do and reach people and connect with this particular group of people, it's very unique. I mean, if you're a 45-year-old male, you're probably not going to get it.
No, you won't. And that's okay, because there's a ministry out there for you. And the other thing that I think I was thinking about too, that I wanted also this ministry to have a personality, where, it actually felt like, instead of working with an organization, that you felt like you were working with a person. And so I wanted that to come out in the layout, in the visuals, and also the language, so that this way it kind of it really felt like a person rather than just a building or an organization. And so that was one of the overarching themes that I wanted, and it seemed like it came out that way.
What's your dream for 99 for One?
Well, I have this dream that at some point, everybody's going to have a phone, and if you ever feel that, and with the phone in hand, you'll have the ability to connect and to explore God, and basically, you never have to be alone again, because you can find somebody online. And I'm hoping that at some point everybody has access to the internet, and then this will give anybody, no matter where they're at, a chance to connect. And so this way, I kind of feel that nobody has to be alone anymore, even if you're in a remote area or you feel like you're alone.
Yeah, that's great. So 99for1.co. So 99, the number 41.co. You can check out what Geno is doing. Just take a look at it and see if it might inspire you for something you're thinking about doing. Geno, how can people get hold of you if they want to do that?
Well, actually on Instagram, on the website, 99for1.co, if you want to send me a direct message, kind of, just ask me anything about what we're doing and, the background. And I will say this, one other thing is I was just thinking about is that I also felt that it was important to have a CRM underneath the website. And the idea behind it is that this way, nobody gets lost. I didn't want anybody to feel like they were lost, so we could follow up with people individually rather than just letting them go. So I felt the idea of putting a CRM underneath it and using that same process that we take somebody through and hopefully keep connecting with them, individually, so that way the idea is we care. We want to, that we're not going to forget about you, because we know they're busy. The fearless, fun female millennial, she forgets a lot of things. And so she's always busy. And so we know that we have to keep a hold of her. And I thought that was pretty unique in the fact that we put an individual CRM where everybody gets tracked, and everybody gets reached out to, even if they forget about us.
Yeah, and a CRM is basically what's used in the business world to track clients or potential clients. and it's highly relational. You can put notes in there, so somebody maybe signs up on your website to, get a free resource of some kind. You're just able to put them into even like an email sequence, maybe text message sequence. Some of it's automated, and then other parts of it are just you as the kind of the owner are able to go in there and kind of see where people are on their journey, and then
Right.
help them take next steps and move them forward. So Geno has invested heavily into like, hey, I really want to make this work. We're gonna use software that people use to typically kind of help to sell a product, but we're going to use it to help people move forward on their journey, ultimately to connecting with a great community of believers, and ultimately the hope is that they connect with God and the gospel and respond to that. So I'm glad you mentioned the CRM, but that was a big part of the process of, it's
Right.
not just the website. So if you do check out the website at 99for1.co, you could know behind it, like underneath it, there's a whole like software that's making it all work, and there's automations and tracking and different things that are going on within that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Hey Gino, hey, thanks a lot for sharing what you're doing. I just thought it was a neat story of like, hey, Gino's just doing something unique, something a little different, but with the same heart in mind of everybody that's on this podcast. And how can we get the gospel out there to as many people as we possibly can? And you're just doing it in a way that's a little bit more unique than most churches are doing. I want to thank Gino for sharing his vision, his passion, and some tactics with us. My hope is that it inspires you to take what you're doing and even try something a little different. Maybe you can cross pollinate and use some tactics from a different industry to help you reach people in your community, get them to engage with the church, and hopefully God can do some amazing things as they engage with your church. So that's kind of the idea of this conversation today, to give you inspiration. If you would like to connect with me, just remember to go to churchbrandguide.com. We'll have a great conversation. You can schedule a time to talk with me. We can talk about your church's brand and see if I might be able to help you out. Hey, remember to subscribe to the podcast. Leave a review too. That really helps the podcast to reach more people. So if you have a moment to leave that review, that would be amazing. Hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time.